Chaya Bega Domi, Chaya Dosha Shodhi, Chaya Guna Deho Dase. Chaya Satsanga Deho he amare Voshachi Shangera Ashe. Ekaki amar nahi pai balo harinama sankirtane. Tumi kripa kori sharabindu diya deho Krishna nama dhane. Krishna se toma, Krishna jite paro, tomara shakati ache. Amito kanga Krishna Krishna Bodhi Daitava Pache Pache. O hey Vaishnava Thakur Dayara Sagara Edase Karuna Kori. Jaya Vaishnav Thakur, Vaishnav Thakur, Vaishnav Thakur, Jaya Vaishnav Thakur. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada. Lord Chaitanya is next. Ujjvala varana Gauravara deham Divasita niravari bhava videham. Gadaram Kara Baba Vikaram Nujana Karjana Nada Vishalam. Baba Baya Bhajana Karuna Karunam Tamra Arunam Bharadara Charu Kapolam Indu Vinindita Nakachaya Ruchiram Jaltita Ninja Gunanama Vinodam Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Sachitanayam Vigalita Nayana Kamala Jaladharam Bhushana Navarasa Bhava Vikaram Gati Yati Mantada Nitya Vilasam Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Sachitanayam Chanchala Chari Charana Gati Ruchiram Manjira Ranjita Parajita Madhuram Chandra Vinindita Shitala Vadanam Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Sachitanayam Chitakati Dora Tamandalu Bandam Divya Kalivara Mundita Mundam Pujana Kalmasha Kandhana Dandam Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Sachitanayam Bhushana Viraja Lata Valita Kampita Vindara Vara Ruchiram Malaya Javira Chitta Ujjala Tilakam Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Sachitanayam Nindita Aruna Kamala Dalanayana Ajanulam Vita Shri Puja Kalevaya Kaishara Nartakadesham Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Sachitanayam Sudrala Vadana Dehavara Deha Silakrita Niravari Bhava Videha Tribhuvana Pavana Kripaya Lesham Dakkana Mami Cha Shri Sachitanayam Jai Sachinandana, Jai Sachinandana, Jai Sachinandana, Jai Draupadi. Jai Sachinandana, Jai Sachinandana, Jai Sachinandana, Jai Draupadi. Jai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Jai Gaura Hari Bo. Vibhavari Shesha Aloka Pravisha Nidrachari Utajiva Bolo Hari Hari Mukunda Murari Rama Krishna Hayagriva Nishinga Vamana Shri Madhusudana Rajendra Nandana Shama Putana Dhatana Kaitava Shadana Jaya Dasharati Rama Yashoda Julala Govinda Gopala Vrindavana Purandhana Gopi Priyajana Radhika Ramana Bhuvana Sundara Bhavya Ravana Kakara Makana Kakara Gopi Jana Vasrahari Rajayana Pala Gopa Vrindavana Chipkahari Vashidhari Yogendra Vandana Sridhana Prajatana Baya Hari Davina Nirara Rupa Manohara Mohana Vamshi Vihari Yodanandana Shri Sudana Nikunjara Savilasi Dhanamakanana Rasaparayana Vrindavi Kinari Ahati Ananda Vardhan Premani Ketana Kulashara Jotakama Gopangana Chitta Vinodana Samasta Guna Gana Jamuna Jivana Keliparayana Manasacham Nam Sundara Gau Krishna Jata Rakhavasana Manamoda Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Go Premanande. Bhagavad Gita chapter 9, please. Number 9. Chapter 9, the most confidential knowledge. Rajakuya Yoga Atanamamot Pratyayaha Shri Bhagavan Vacha Idam Sukhe Viyakama Prabhaksham Yanasuyare Vijnana Sahitam Yajñatva Mokshashe Shubha Raja Vijaraja Kuhyam Pavitra Idam Uttamam Pratyakshavagam Karmyam Susukham Partam Avyayam Ashadadana Purusha Dharmasyasya Parantapa Aprapya Mam Nivartante Mrityu Samsara Vartmani Vayatatamidam Sarvam Jagadavyakta Murtina Matstani Sarva Bhutani Nachaham Teshvavastitaha Nacha Matstani Bhutani Pashyame Yogamaishvaram Bhuta Brinna Cha Bhutasto Mamatma Bhuta Bhavana Yatakashastito Nityam Vayu Sarvatra Gomahan Tatas Sarvani Bhutani Matstanityupadaraya Sarva Bhutani Kaunteya Prakritim Yanti Mamikam Kalpakshayi Punastani Kalpadau Visrajam Yaham Prakritim Swamavashtabhya Visrajami Punah Punah Bhutagramam Imam Kritsnam Avasham Prakriter Vashat Nachamam Tani Karmani Nibadnanti Dhananjaya Udasina Vadasinam Asaktam Teshu Karmasu Mayadyakshena Prakriti Suyate Sacharacharam Hetunanena Kaunteya Jagad Viparivartate Apyatanti Mam Buddha Manushim Tanamashritam Padam Bhavam Ajananto Mama Bhuta Maheshwaram Moghasha Mogha Karmano Mogha Jnana Vichetasaha Rakshasim Asurim Chaiva Prakritim Mohinim Shrita Mahatmanastu Mam Partha Daivim Prakritim Ashrita Bhajantya Nanya Manaso Gyatva Bhutadam Avyayam Satatam Kirtayanto Mam Yatantascha Dradavrata Namasyantascha Mam Bhaktya Nitya Yukta Upasate Jnana Yagnena Chapyanye Yajanto Mam Upasate Ekatvena Pritatvena Bahuda Vishvato Mukham Aham Kratur Aham Yajna Swadaham Ham Aushadam Mantroham Aham Evajam Aham Agnir Aham Hutam Pitaham Asya Jagato Mata Dhata Pitamaha Vejam Pavitram Omkara Riksama Yajrevacha Gatir Bharata Prabhu Sakshi Nivasan Sharanam Sukhrit Pravava Pralayastanam Nidhanam Vijamavyayam Tapam Yaham Maham Barsham Nigranam Yutsrajami Cha Amritam Chaiva Mrityuscha Sadasachchaham Arjuna Traividyamam Soma Papu Tapapa Jagner Ishva Swargatim Prarthayante Te Punyama-sajja Sarenja Lokam Ashnanti Divyan Divideva Bhogan Te Tam Bhuktva Swarga Lokam Vishalam Shinye Punye Martya Lokam Vishanti Evam Traidharmam Anuprapanna Gata Gatam Kama Kama Labhante Ananya Shintayanto Mam Ye Jana Paryupasate Tesham Nityabdi Yuktanam Yogakshemam Mahamyaham Ye Pyanya Devata Bhakta Yajante Shadayanvita Te Pimameva Kaunteya Yajantya Vidipurvakam Aham hi sarva yagnanam bhokta cha prabhur eva cha natumam abhijananti tatvena tasyavanti te yanti deva vrata devan pitrin yanti pratirvrata bhutani yanti bhuteja yanti madhyajinopimam Patram pushpam palam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhakti paritam ashnami pariyatatmanaha yakoroshi yadashnasi yajjohoshi dadasi yat yap tapasyasi kaunteya tatkudishva madarpanam shubha shubha palerevam Moksha se karma bandhanai Sannyasa yoga yuktatma Vimukto mam upaishyasi Samoham sarva bhuteshu Name dveshosti na priya Ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya Mai te teshu chapyaham Api chet sudaracharo Bhajate mam ananya bhak Satur eva samantavya samyak vyavasito hisa Shripram bhavati dharmatma shashvat shantim negachyati Kaunteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashyati Mami partha vyapashritya yepi subhapayonaya Sriyo vaishastata shudras Tepi yanti param gatim Kim punar brahmana punya Bhakta rajarshayastata Anityam asukam lokam Imam prapya bhajasvamam Manmana bhavamad bhakto Madhyajimam namaskuru Mami vashyasi yutvaivam Atmanam matparayanaha Om Tat Saditi Srimad Bhagavad Gita Supanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Sambhade Rajakuya Yogo Nama Nama Modhyayaha Hari Om. Now please turn to the chapter The Son of Drona Punished, Srimad Bhagavatam. Play that new raga while we're waiting for it. Hare Krishna, Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Shaunakuvacha Nirgate Narade Sutta Bhagavan Badarayana Shuta Bamshtad Adipretam Tata Kim Akarod Vibhu. Translations 2. Rishi Shaunaka asked together, O Sutta, the great and transcendently powerful Vyasadeva heard everything from Sri Narada Muni. So after Narada's departure, what did Vyasadeva do? Keep going. It's a Sanskrit and then the English, please. Nexta. Sugiwa. Shaunakuvacha. Shaunakuvacha. Oh, that's the number 1 again. Let's go to number 2. What? Son of Drona punished. Is this it? We crossed over into another universe. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Sutavacha Brahmadyadyam Saraswatyam Ashrama Paschime Tate Samya Prasa Iti Prokta Rishinam Satra Vardhana. Shri Sutta said, on the western bank of the river Saraswati, which is intimately related with the Vedas, there is a cottage for meditation at Shamya Prasa, which enlivens the transcendental activities of the sages. Tasmin sva ashrame vyaso badari shandamandate asino pa upa shrishya pranidadyo manaksvayam. Under instructions of his spiritual master, Srila Narada Muni, altogether, under instructions of his spiritual master, Srila Narada Muni, Vyasadeva concentrated his mind in that transcendental place of meditation. Getting there. Oh, somehow we got changed. These are questions of the sages. Okay, yeah. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We need the translation for the previous one. Previous. Number 3, no? 4. Thus, together, thus he fixed his mind, perfectly engaging it by linking it in devotional service, bhakti yoga, without any tinge of materialism. And thus he saw the absolute personality of Godhead along with his external energy, which was under full control. Yaya samohito jiva atmanam trigunatmakam padopi manute nartam tvakitam chabi padyate. Due to this external energy, the living entity, although transcendental to the 3 modes of material nature, thinks of himself as a material product and thus undergoes the reactions of material miseries. Anarto pashanam sakshad bhakti yogam adoksaje lokasya janato vidvams chakre satvata samhitam. The material miseries of the living entity, which are superfluous to him, can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. But the mass of people do not know this, and therefore the learned Vyasadeva compiled this Vedic literature, which is in relation to the supreme truths. Yasyam Vaishyamanayam Krishna Parama Purushe Bhaktir Utpadyate Pumsa Shoka Moha Bhayapaha. Simply by giving oral reception to this Vedic literature, the feeling for loving devotional service to Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, sprouts up at once to extinguish the fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness. Sa samhitam bhagavatim kritvanu kramya chatmajam shukam adhyapayam asa nivritti niratam muni. The great sage Vyasadeva, after compiling the Srimad Bhagavatam and revising it, taught it to his own son, Sri Shukadeva Goswami, who was already engaged in self-realization. Shaunaka uvacha savai nivritti nirata sarvatro pekshato muni kasyava brihatim etam atmarama samabhyasat. She, Shaunaka, asked Suta Goswami. Shukadeva Goswami was already on the path of self-realization, and thus he was pleased with his own self. So why did he take the trouble to undergo the study of such a vast literature? Suta uvacha atmaramascha munayo nikranta apyarukrame kurvantya haitu kim bhaktim itam bhuta gunohari. Suta Goswami said, all different varieties of Atma Ramas, those who take pleasure in the Atma or spirit self, especially those established on the path of self-realization, though freed from all kinds of material bondage, desire to render unalloyed devotional service unto the personality of Godhead. This means that the Lord possesses transcendental qualities and therefore can attract everyone, including liberated souls. Harer gunakshita matir Bhagavan Badarayani Adyagan Mahad Akyanam Nityam Vishnu Janapriya. Srila Shukadeva Goswami said, son of Srila Vyasadeva, was not only transcendental powerful, he was also very dear to the devotees of the Lord. Thus he underwent the study of this great narration, Srimad Bhagavatam. Parikshitota Rajasher Janma Karma Balapanam Samstam Cha Pandapudranam Vakshe Krishna Katodayam. Suta Goswami thus addressed the rishis headed by Shaunaka. Now I shall begin the transcendental narration of Lord Sri Krishna and topics of the birth, activities, and deliverance of King Parikshit, the sage amongst kings, as well as topics of the renunciation of the worldly order by the sons of Pandu. Yadamride Kauravasinjayanam Viryeshyato Viragatim Gateshu Vrikodara Vidakadami Marsha Bhagnora Dande Dhritarashtra Putre Bhartu Priyandronir Itisma Pashyan Krishna Sutanam Sapatham Shiramsi Upaharad Vipriyam Eva Tatsya Jagupsitam Karma Vikarhayati. When the respective warriors of both camps, namely the Kauravas and the Pandavas, were killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and the dead warriors obtained their deserved destinations, and when the son of Dhritarashtra fell down lamenting, his spine broken, being beaten by the club of Bhimasena, the son of Dronacharya, Ashvatthama beheaded the 5 sleeping sons of Draupadi and delivered the heads as a prize to his master foolishly thinking that he would be pleased. Duryodhana, however, disapproved of the heinous act, and he was not pleased in the least. Mata shishunam nidhanam sutranam nishamya gauram pratipadyamana tadra rudadvapsha kalakulakshi tansanta yaha kritamalani. Draupadi, the mother of the 5 children of the Pandavas, after hearing of the massacre of her sons, began to cry in distress with eyes full of tears, trying to pacify her in her great loss. Trying to pacify her in her great loss, Arjuna spoke to her thus. Tada shuchaste primrijani badre yad brahma bando shira atatayina gandiva mukter vishakar upahare twakramya yatsnayasi dagdaputra. O gentle lady, when I present you with the head of that Brahmana, after beheading him with arrows from my Gandiva bow, I shall then wipe the tears from your eyes and pacify you. Then after burning your sons' bodies, you can take your bath standing on his head. Iti priyam balgu vichitra jalpai sasantvat yata chuta mitra sutta anvadravadam shita ugradanva kapidvajo guru putram ratena. Arjuna, who is guided by the infallible Lord as friend and driver, thus satisfied the dear lady by such statements. Then he dressed in armor, himself with furious weapons, and getting into his chariot, he set out to follow Ashvatthama, the son of his martial teacher. Tam apatantam savilakshya durat Kumara hodvignam anaratena paradravatran paripse urdvyam yadvadgamam rujabayadyataka. Ashvatthama, the murderer of the princes, seeing from a great distance Arjuna coming at him with great speed, fled in his chariot, panic-stricken, just to save his life, as Brahma fled in fear of Shiva. Yada sharana manam aikshata shanta vajinam astra brahma shiro mene atmatranam dvijatmaja. When the son of the Brahmana, Ashvatthama, saw that his horses were tired, he considered that there was no alternative for protection outside of his using the ultimate weapon, the Brahmastra, nuclear weapon. Ato pasprisha salilam sandade tat samahita ajanam api samharam pranakritsha upastite. Since his life was in danger, he touched water in sanctity and concentrated upon the chanting of the hymns for throwing nuclear weapons, although he did not know how to withdraw such weapons. Tata pradushkritam teja prachandram sarvato disham pranat padam apashekshya vishnum jishnum vachaha. Thereupon a glaring light spread in all directions. It was so fierce that Arjuna thought his own life in danger, and so he began to address Lord Sri Krishna. Arjuna vacha Krishna Krishna mahabaho bhaktanam apyatankara tvam eko dayamananam apargosi samashrite. Arjuna said, O my Lord Sri Krishna, you are the almighty personality of Godhead. There is no limit to your different energies. Therefore, only you are competent to instill fearlessness in the hearts of your devotees. Everyone in the flames of material miseries can find the path of liberation in you only. Tvam adya purusha sakshad ishvara prakrite para mayam dyudyasya chikshakcha kaivalye stita atmani. You are the original personality of Godhead who expands himself all over the creation. Material energy. You have cast away the effects of the material energy by dint of your spiritual potency. You are always situated in eternal bliss and transcendental knowledge. Sa eva jiva lokasya maya mohita chetasa vidhatse swena viryena shreyo dharmadi lakshanam. And yet, though you are beyond the purview of the material energy, you execute the four principles of liberation characterized by religion and so on for the ultimate good of the conditioned souls. Tatayam chavataraste bhuvo bharajishaya swanam chananya bhavanam anudyanaya chashrakrit. Thus you descend as an incarnation to remove the burden of the world and to benefit your friends, especially those who are your exclusive devotees and are constantly wrapped in meditation upon you. Kim idam swit kuto veti deva deva navebyaham sarvatro mukam ayati teja paramadarunam. O Lord of Lords, how is it that this dangerous effulgence is spreading all around? Where does it come from? I do not understand it. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Vethedam Drona Prutrasya Brahmam Astram Padarshitam Naiva Salveda Samharam Pranabhada Upastite. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Know from me that this is the act of the son of Drona. He has thrown the hymns of nuclear energy, Brahmastra, and he does not know how to retract the glare. He has helplessly done this, being afraid of imminent death. Na yasyananutmanchit asram pratyavakarshanam jayastra teja unnadham astadnyo yastra tejasa." O Arjuna, only another Brahmastra can counteract this weapon. Since you are expert in the military science, subdue this weapon's glare with the power of your own weapon. Neatness counts. Synchronicity is supreme. We get no extra credit for going faster. Sutuvacha Shutva Bhagavata Proktam Palguna Paraviraha Sprishvaspa Tam Parikramya Brahmam Brahmastram Sandade. Shri Sutta Goswami said, hearing this from the personality of Godhead, Arjuna touched water for purification, and after circumambulating Lord Sri Krishna, he cast his Brahmastra weapon to counteract the other one. Samhatyanayon Tejasi Shara Sambrate Avritya Rodasi Kamvacha Vavridat Vadivat. Can we do that again, please? Do over. Samhatyan Yonyam Ubhayos Tejasi Shara Sambrate Avritya Rodasi Kamcha Vavridater Ka Va Nivat Vanivat. When the rays of the two Brahmastras combined, a great circle of fire, like the disk of the sun, covered all outer space and the whole firmament of planets. Shrishvastra Tejas Tu Tayos Trilokan Pradhanam Mahat Dhayamana Praja Sarva Samvartakam Amamsata. All the population of the three worlds was scorched by the combined heat of the weapons. Everyone was reminded of the Samvartaka fire, which takes place at the time of annihilation. Prajopadravam alaksha loka vyatikaram chatam matam cha vasudevasya sanjahararjuno dvayam. Thus, seeing the disturbance of the general populace and the imminent destruction of the planets, Arjuna at once retracted both Brahmastra weapons as Lord Sri Krishna desired. Tata asadyatarasa darunam gautami sutam bhabhanda marsha tamriksha pashum rashanayajyata. Arjuna, his eyes blazing in anger like two red balls of copper, dexterously arrested the son of Gautami and bound him with ropes like an animal. Shibraya nindashan rajva badva ripambalat prakarjunan prakupito bhagavan ambujakshana. After binding Ashvatthama, Arjuna wanted to take him to the military camp. The personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, looking on with his lotus eyes, spoke to Arjuna in an angry mood. Mainam paratarhasi trantam ramabandhum imam jahi yosavanagasa suptam avadhinni shibalakan. Lord Sri Krishna said, O Arjuna, you should not show mercy by releasing this relative of a Brahmana, Ramabandhu, for he has killed innocent boys in their sleep. Matam pramantam unnatam suptam balam shiraujadam pranapannam viranpuitam narupam hanti dharmavit. A person who knows the principles of religion does not kill an enemy who is careless, intoxicated, insane, asleep, afraid, or devoid of his chariot, nor does he kill a boy, a woman, a foolish creature, or a surrendered soul. Swapranam yapara pranai praupashnat yugrana kala tadvadnas tasya hi shreyo yadoshad yat yada puman. A cruel and wretched person who maintains his existence at the cost of others' lives deserves to be killed for his own well-being. Otherwise, he will go down by his own actions. Pratishrutam cha bhavata panchalai shinvato mama arishye shirastasya yaste manini putraha. Furthermore, I have personally heard you promise Draupadi that you would bring forth the head of the killer of her sons. Tadasa vanyatam papa atatya madhubadam bhartuscha vipriyam vira kritavan kula pumsana. This man is an assassin and murderer of your own family members. Not only that, but he has also dissatisfied his master. He is but the burnt remnants of his family. Kill him immediately. Sutuvacha evam pratikshata dharmam partha krishnena chodita naicha dantum guru sutam yad yap yatma hanam mahan. Sutta Goswami said, although Krishna, who is examining Arjuna in religion, encouraged Arjuna to kill the son of Dronacharya, Arjuna, a great soul, did not like the idea of killing him, although Ashvatthama was a heinous murderer of Arjuna's family members. Ato petya shivaram Govinda prayasarati Nyavedayat tvam vriyayai sanchotya atmajanhatan. After reaching his own camp, Arjuna, along with his dear friend and charioteer, Sri Krishna, entrusted the murderer unto his dear wife, who was lamenting for her murdered sons. Tataritam pushavat pascha bhavadham abanbukam karma jigupsitena nariksha krishna prakrityam uronasatam vama sabhava kripaya nanamacha. Shri Sutta Goswami said, Draupadi then saw Ashvatthama, who was bound with ropes like an animal and silent for having enacted the most inglorious murder. Due to her female nature and due to her being naturally good and well-behaved, she showed him due respects as Brahmana. Could we have tech support, please? Uvacha shasahantyasya bandhanan yamanam sati. Called Ramanandasaka. Muchatam esha brahmano nitaram guru. She could not tolerate Ashvatthama's being bound by ropes. And being a devoted lady, she said, release him, for he is a Brahmana. It's me? How is it this? Hari Hari. Sarahasya Dhanurveda Savisargo Pasamyama Astra Gramyasya Bhavata Shikshito Yadanugrahat. It was by Dronacharya's mercy that you learned the military art of throwing arrows and the confidential art of controlling weapons. Saesha Bhagavan Drona Prajarupena Vartate Tasya Manoradham Pratyaste Nanvagad Virashu Kripi. He, Dronacharya, is certainly still existing, represented by his son. His wife Kripi did not undergo a sati with him because she had a son. Dharmaja Mahabhaga Bhavadbir Gauravam Kulam Vrijinam Narhati Praptum Pujam Vandyam Abhikshnasha. O most fortunate one who knows the principles of religion, it is not good for you to cause grief to glorious family members who are always respectable and worshipable. Ma rodhid asya jannani Gautami pratidevata yataham rita vatsarta rodhim ashru mukhi muhu. My Lord, do not make the wife of Dronacharya cry like me. I am aggrieved for the death of my sons. She need not cry constantly like me. Yai kopitam brahmakulam Rajanyer ajitatmabi tatkulam pratahatyashu sanubandam sucharpitam. If the kingly administrative order, being unrestricted in sense control, offends the Brahmana order and enrages them, then the fire of that rage burns up the whole body of the royal family and brings grief upon them all. Sutuvacha dharmyam nyayam karunam nibalikam samam mahat raja dharma suto ragna pratyana dat vachodvaja. Sutta Goswami said, O Brahmanas, King Yudhishthira fully supported the statements of the queen, which were in accordance with the principles of religion and were justified, glorious, full of mercy and equity, and without duplicity. Nakula Sahadevascha Yudhano Dhananjaya Bhagavan Devaki Putro Ye Chanye Yascha Yoshita. Nakula and Sahadev, the younger brothers of the king, and also Satyaki, Arjuna, the personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, son of Devaki, and the ladies and others all unanimously agreed with the king. Tatraham sarmishto bimas tasya shreyan vadasmrita na bratur natmanascharte yohan suptan shishun vrita. Bhima, however, angrily disagreed with them and recommended killing this culprit, who had murdered sleeping children for no purpose and for neither his nor his master's interest. Nishamya Bhima Gaditam Draupadyascha Chaturbuja Alokya Varanam Sakyur Idam Aha Hasan Iva. Chaturbuja, the four-armed one, or the personality of Godhead, after hearing the words of Bhima, Draupadi and others, saw the face of his dear friend Arjuna, and he began to speak as if smiling. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Brahma Bandhur Nahantavya Atatayi Vidarhana Mayavo Bhayam Nantam Paripaya Sanam Kuru Pratik Shutam Satyam Yatat Santva Yata Priyam Shabhima Sinasya Panchalya Mayam Evacha. The personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna said, a friend of a Brahmana is not to be killed, but if he is an aggressor, he must be killed. All these rulings are in the scriptures, and you should act accordingly. You fulfill your promise to your wife, and you must also act to the satisfaction of Bhimasena and me. Sutu Vacha Arjuna Sahasanyaya Hare Hardam Tasina Manyam Jahara Murdhanyam Dvijasya Sahamurdhajam. Suta Goswami said, just then Arjuna could understand the motive of the Lord by his equivocal orders, and thus with his sword he severed both hair and jewel from the head of Ashwatthama. Vimucha Rashana Badham Balahatya Hata Prabham Tejasa Maninahinam Shibranira Yapaya. He, Ashwatthama, had already lost his bodily luster due to infanticide, and now, moreover, having lost the jewel from his head, he lost even more strength. Thus he was unbound and driven out of the camp. Vapanam dravina danam stanam niryapanam tata esha hi brahma bandhunam vado nanyosti dahika. Cutting the hair from his head, depriving him of his wealth, and driving him from his residence are the prescribed punishments for the relative of a Brahmana. Thus, there is no injunction for killing the body. Putra shoka tura sarve pandava saha krishnaya swanam ritanam yat krityam chakro nirharanadikam. Thereafter, the sons of Pandu and Draupadi, overwhelmed with grief, performed the proper rituals for the dead bodies of their relatives. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. It's a 3. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Ballabha Jaya Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye. Today we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, and it's Canto 2, Chapter 1, text number 5, please. Hey, it's got your name in it. That's 215 for those who are keeping score at home. And the verse is as follows. Tasmat Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishvaro Hari Shrotavyar Kirtitavyascha Smartavyash Chechata Bhayam. And the word for word, please repeat. Tasmat. For this reason. We'll just go to the last verse translation to see what the tasmat is about, because it's a concluding statement. And that verse number 4 says, persons devoid of atma-tattva do not inquire into the problems of life, being too attached to the fallible soldiers like the body, children, and wife. Although sufficiently experienced, they do not see their inevitable destruction. So then, tasmat. Now here's what to do about that. Next word is Bharata, O descendant of Bharat. Sarvatma, the Supersoul. Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Ishvara, the controller. Hari, the Lord who vanquishes all miseries. Shrotavya, is to be heard. Kirtitavya, to be glorified. Cha, also. Smartavya, to be remembered. Cha, and Ichchata, of one who desires. Abhayam, freedom. O descendant of King Bharat, one who desires to be free from all miseries must hear about, glorify, and also remember the personality of Godhead, who is the Supersoul, the controller, and the savior from all miseries. Srila Prabhupada's purport. In the previous verse, Sri Shukadev Goswami has determined how the foolish, materially attached men are wasting their valuable time in the improvement of all material conditions of life by sleeping, indulging in sex life, developing economic conditions, and maintaining a band of relatives who are to be vanquished in the air of oblivion. Being engaged in all these materialistic activities, the living soul entangles himself in the cycle of the law of fruit of actions. This entails the chain of birth and death in the 8,400,000 species of life, the aquatics, the vegetables, the reptiles, the birds, the beasts, the uncivilized man, and then again the human form, which is the chance for getting out of the cycle of fruit of action. Therefore, if one desires freedom from this vicious cycle, then one must cease to act as a karmi or enjoyer of the results of one's own work, good or bad. One should not do anything, either good or bad, on his own account, but must execute everything on behalf of the Supreme Lord, the ultimate proprietor of everything that be. This process of doing work is recommended in the Bhagavad Gita 9:27 also, where instruction is given for working on the Lord's account. Therefore, one should first of all hear about the Lord. When one has perfectly and scrutinizingly heard, one must glorify his acts and deeds, and thus it will become possible to remember constantly the transcendental nature of the Lord. hearing about and glorifying the Lord are identical with the transcendental association of the Lord. This brings freedom from all sorts of fear. The Lord is the Supersoul, Paramatma, present in the hearts of all living beings, and thus by the above hearing and glorifying process, the Lord invites the association of all in His creation. I'll read that again because I chopped it up. The Lord is the Supersoul, Paramatma, present in the hearts of all living beings. And thus, by the above hearing and glorifying process, the Lord invites the association of all in His creation. This process of hearing about and glorifying the Lord is applicable for everyone, whoever he may be, and it will lead one to the ultimate success in everything in which one may be engaged by providence. There are many classes of human beings: the fruitive workers, the empiric philosophers, the mystic yogis, and ultimately the unalloyed devotees. For all of them, one and the same process is applicable for achieving the desired success. Everyone wants to be free from all kinds of fear, and everyone wants the fullest extent of happiness in life. The perfect process for achieving this here and now is recommended in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is uttered by such a great authority as Srila Shukadeva Goswami. By hearing about and glorifying the Lord, all a person's activities become molded into spiritual activities. And thus, all conceptions of material miseries become completely vanquished. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Nilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatite Shatarne Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this verse definitely reinforces the idea that Krishna brings up at other places, and so do other acharyas, about the pervasiveness of fear in this world. As an example, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Havi Yogendra says, Bhayam dvitiya abhinibeshatasya ishad apetasya viparya yosmriti, that everyone in this world is afraid when in an adverse or in a reversed situation according to his or her nature. That is, that our nature is to be in resonance with Krishna, as we're parts and parcels, just like a spark is a part of the fire. It has the same quality, and it's a part of the fire. It's one, but it also has its independence. So a living being is a spark, a chitkana, a particle of consciousness that's always and eternally an individual, just as Krishna is always and eternally an individual. And that living entity being a stamp of the Supreme Lord, or having the same qualities of the Lord, who is Ishvara, that is, the Lord is Ishvara, the Supreme Controller. The living entity can also try to be an individual controller, and then comes into competition with the Supreme Controller in mentality, not actually, because Krishna has no competitor. But either overtly, as we see from various personalities that we meet in the Bhagavatam, like Shalva and Dantavakra, they felt a fierce anger towards Krishna and thought that they could slay him, actually. And then there's this non-overt, what is the word I'm looking for? Covert sense of competition with Krishna, in the attempt to live separately from him and ignore his existence altogether. It's like some people are even theists, but then they act as competitors to the Lord in the way they try to take advantage of the material world in ways that ignore Krishna's support and maintenance. And so when one has either covertly or overtly this sense of competition with Krishna, says Havi Yogendra, then fear arises because of being in a tenuous situation and a situation that can never be resolved. We're at odds with the Supreme Controller. So the verse goes on to say that Tanmaya tam Buddha abhijit tam bhaktyayika yesha guru devatatma. The word eka is in the verse. It says that one should have one-pointed attention to turn towards Krishna and to think of Krishna and serve him. And a couple ways are mentioned. Tanmaya Buddha abhijit tam bhaktyayika yesham guru devatatma. There's a sense of accepting a representative of Krishna who's speaking from the Vedas and also accepting Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then today's verse, we also have this sense of resolution, like how to deal with this tenuous situation, fearful situation of being a competitor of Krishna, and that's to hear about him. And when we hear about Krishna, both about him and we hear his instructions, then there's a transformation of heart where we begin to appreciate his unlimited kindness and his opulences and his beauty and so forth. I think it's a statement Prabhupada makes that, I know he says in the Bhagavad Gita that one begins to gradually lose one's long-cherished desire to dominate the material world. And there's an old bumper sticker, I think it comes from AA, which says, "Let go, let God." And there's a sense that, okay, I don't have to be the Supreme Controller. That's a great relief, actually, because this sense of trying to fix everything that I don't have the wherewithal to fix becomes a great strain. In fact, many have observed this, like Stephen Covey, who wrote 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. Hope I didn't give the wrong title. And he mentions that we have a circle of concern. And then within that large circle of concern, in fact, it can be ever increasing depending on what kind of news channels you're listening to. Within that, there's a tiny little circle called our circle of influence. What can we actually do something about? How can we make a difference in it? And when we act outside that circle of influence, then we become swept away by a whirlpool of... Are you swept away by a whirlpool? You're more likely to be pulled in. Let's just say there are currents that will carry us away from our real interest in life, and we'll be in this fearful situation that anything can happen any minute, and we feel I don't have much control over it. So the Bhagavatam is telling us what our real circle of influence is, and it's rather simple. It's to hear about Krishna and then worship him. And anything within that circle is productive for us and brings us out of this acute sense of fear of the world, because we're letting go and letting God. And we're understanding that Krishna's all-powerful and I'm not. That's a great admission to have. And that we can't untangle ourselves from the labyrinth of karmic reactions, the knot that develops over so many years. we develop a bank account, actually. Several bank accounts. Anybody have more than one? Probably. And maybe a safety deposit box here or there. Maybe something buried in your backyard. Every living entity has this karmic account of various cherished material desires and also reactions waiting to come because of previous activities in the material world which were not well reasoned. And it's the real purpose of an intelligent living being to close all those accounts, divest oneself of one's interest here in the material world altogether. It doesn't mean that we become antisocial or that we're less loving towards others. In fact, when we have a higher sense of purpose, we may be more loving. Like yesterday, we saw a lot of people holding hands as they walked by, and people were most likely thinking of ways to please others by going into a shop and buying a sweater that someone probably, they'll think, oh, if it was a slightly different color, I would have liked it. Or I hate this material, but I still have to wear it because they bought it for me. Whatever it may be, the ways in which people, if they did have such a motive to please others, would fall short in some way or other. We didn't know. In fact, I met a neighbor out there, but other than that, I didn't know anybody. But we felt a kinship with all of them. We saw that these are souls walking around in various bodies with various interests in life, and they had their karmic bank accounts here, there, and everywhere. And if we were to think, let me do something for one of these people, I'll dedicate my life to it by helping them to develop economically or get a good education, then we would fall short. Because the solution isn't something superfluous to the real interest of the living entity and to the real problem. So the root cause is ignorance of Krishna, forgetfulness of Krishna, and to remind those who are souls in a material world, in various material bodies which are affected by the modes of nature. And I suggest we should ask the mayor that during the Black Friday event, we should have a moment of silence out there. 60 seconds where everyone stops beating on pots and pans, stop screaming at the top of their lungs, turn off everything, and just see what it sounds like for 60 seconds to not be so loud and just charging forth into the world to think, like, I have to do this, impelled by the Rajo and Tamogun. I asked several devotees yesterday, what mode is prevalent here? Can you detect it? And they were pretty sure about it. So the problem there isn't that there's not enough real estate space. In fact, they can't use it all. I noticed that the particular places that told us we can't chant in front of their stores are now closed. It's like almost permanently. I mean, we could have warned them, but now we got a free space to chant Hare Krishna. So the solution is given here, that we can overcome the maladies that we experience due to our exposure to the material world, and we can begin to replace what we've cherished for so long, this karmic bank account, with a real bank account, which is to have punya shravana kirtana, these spiritually based pious credits that you can invest in. It's a great investment. And all you have to do is hear about Krishna. And then gradually, our sense of control for the material world gets replaced by a sense of confidence in Krishna, controlling and maintaining. And we also have a sense that our real wealth lies in the spiritual asset that we develop by hearing about Krishna and remembering him. which is not possible unless one hears. One has to hear sufficiently. And there's a few qualities that become especially troublesome to us here in this world. One of them is greed. Krishna mentions these qualities in the Bhagavad Gita, where he says there's 3 gateways that lead to hellish condition of life. And one of them is to be greedy. You might notice that whatever we do in this life, and we do have to maintain some status quo, because especially if one is in any situation, we have to maintain a status quo. So let's just say you're a grihasta, you have to take care of your economic situation, right? You don't just ignore it. There are bills you have to pay. You have to pay for anything else, like specifically? You got to pay taxes, because if you don't pay your property tax on your house, then you'll be in legal trouble with the government, and you can't fight City Hall. You'll lose your asset altogether, the one that you're sitting on where you do your bhajan. You'll lose that. There are others as well. Insurance is important. You have to have enough coverage so that you're not exposed to lawsuits that could take away all your assets. It's also medical insurance is important. I could go on and on. I don't mean to put everyone in anxiety. You know the list of things that you have to maintain. So those do have to be taken care of. But it should be done, as is mentioned in the purport here, as a sense that I'm maintaining this for my service to Krishna. I'm maintaining the body as a service for Krishna also. Like, we have to maintain 3 things Prabhupada said could be increased unlimitedly. Exercise. Some people, that's all they do, all the time. It's like, what do you lift weights? What do you do besides that? I put them back down again. And then there's economic development and also eating. You can eat and eat and eat, and your stomach will just expand, and you'll expand. And you'll think, oh, this is normal. It's like, that's your normal, but it's not entirely healthy. So Krishna recommends that in all the activities of our life, that where we have to maintain ourselves by Krishna's grace. Obviously, we're getting things by His grace, but we have to utilize them properly and not become out of balance. So if we have that in balance, then it's a base from which we can serve Krishna. So one of the pernicious elements that can ruin our situation is greed. If I get a sense of trying to get more through some kind of expedient means, there's what's called get-rich-quick schemes. If it's too good to be true, then it's too good. It's not something that you should pursue. Be careful about trying to leapfrog ahead and just dominate the material world or be wealthier than everybody else, and be measured in the way you be conservative, be careful in the way that we interact with the world. A rule of thumb is, if you detect in yourself even one molecule of greed when someone gives you an offer that you think you can't refuse, that's, oh, if I just do this one thing, I'll take a chance and I'll be wealthy. If you detect any sense of greed, and you should look carefully, and this is one of the reasons we chant Hare Krishna, to be purified and to be able to notice it in ourselves, any of these contaminating mentalities. If we have this sense of greed, then be a hero and don't do it. Lots of people, including devotees, have lost their balance financially because of not heeding this advice, that if it seems too good to be true, or if you have even a molecule of greed in your heart when you're looking at it, thinking like, I'll be a rich person and I'll beat everybody else also. and a sense of like, I need more. I have to have more. There's a one word that describes somebody who's content enough to not give in to greed, and that is enough. Even if we stop the music right now, as in musical chairs, and this is the place I have right now, it's enough for me. I can be satisfied. This is a Brahminical mentality, which is in the mode of goodness. Prabhupada described some Brahmins that he knew, actual Brahmins, who would this teach, and whatever people would give them in return. They didn't charge. They'd use that for maintenance. And he said there was one that for some time he could barely afford anything except a little rice. And he had some tamarind leaves. He had a tree, just like you have a tree. Even Srivas have a big, not tamarind, it's curry leaves. That's even better. If you have a curry leaf tree. I think probably said tamarind, but curry leaf, it's the most aromatic and delectable of scents and flavors. You just have that, a little rice, because that's what I'm getting right now. Then Prabhupada said, are you satisfied? It's okay, I don't need anything else. If we have that base, not to say everyone should live on rice and tamarind leaves or even curry leaves, but we have to be careful not to become enticed by this sense of greed that I'm going to get way ahead of everybody else. I'll show it off to my friends. They always said I'd amount to nothing, but I'll show them. This is a sign that something's not in the mode of goodness. All of these we have to be careful as we're prosecuting Krishna consciousness to not be invited to be again trounced by the material energy and have to learn a lesson again. And this strength to overcome greed can be developed by hearing about Krishna. If one feels that hearing about Krishna's wealth is enough for me, that's satisfying me. I feel wealthy if I'm able to book a room somewhere where somebody's reading Bhagavatam. Yeah, that's real wealth. I got a little, where are you staying? Over in the corner there. But I don't care because I feel wealthy because I'm in a situation where I can hear about Krishna. If we can develop that sort of relishment, funny word, of Krishna's pastimes and the whole activity of hearing, then we'll become immune to this kind of greed because we know it can throw us off balance and we can forget about our ultimate goal in life. So along with the hearing and chanting, we have to be careful to cultivate a lifestyle in which we can go on hearing, go on chanting about Krishna and not be sidetracked by the various qualities that Krishna warns us against. And greed is particularly powerful because I think like I got one, why couldn't I got 10? And then as soon as I get 10, I think like we could parlay this into thousands. And then the mind becomes absorbed always in this thought. And it's an interesting phenomena, but people that have $20 million, let's say, then they feel like, oh, I got nothing compared, because already I spent it in my head. My lifestyle, simultaneously in my mind, my idea of how I should be living or how I could be living immediately comes to that level in my mind. So then, okay, someone just gave me $20 million, and now it's not enough. I don't feel satisfied. Or it could be $1 billion. And some billionaires, they're like, I'm nothing. You know, there's others, they have like 40 billion. So I'm a small timer and it's, you know. And also, it doesn't protect us. That's the previous verse. That's why we have the therefore. Because the previous verse, Shukadeva Goswami has made this categorical statement about the material world. Deha patra kalatradishu atmasainyasya satsapi tesham pramato nidhanam pashyana pinat pashyati. Tesha means these people who don't come to this level of understanding of how dangerous the material qualities are, and to therefore wholesale take shelter of the material situation that they're in and think this will protect them. He said they're so deluded that although they have the ability to see this, they don't see it. It's actually discouraging when you show somebody something and then they say, like, yeah, I can't see it. So we're meant to come to this vision that tasmat bharata sarvatma, that all the problems of life are solved by hearing about Krishna and absorbing ourselves in the practice of Krishna consciousness. Let's take a few questions that might bring out more in the verse, or any reflections of something that was helpful in the monologue.
Hare Krishna. You mentioned this concept of the circle of concern and the circle of influence, and I had often thought about them as static, but I was recently thinking that they are dynamic and they can change. And as the more you hear about Krishna, the more advanced you become in devotional service, your circle of concern of the world will shrink, and your circle of influence, true influence in the world, can really grow. And I was thinking that for a pure devotee, their circle of influence may actually be larger than their circle of concern. And I just thought that was an interesting idea, that they can change.
Yeah, it's a good point. And we can lose sense altogether of what our circle of influence is. People are they've lost it on the map or on the chart. It's become so small that I can't find it anymore. So these verses are revelatory. They bring us back to that point. It's like, here's where you want to be. Stay in here, and you're actually gonna have some influence on yourself and on the world. Otherwise, you'll be like everybody else, just in a current, being carried along by the fear of the material world because you're taking shelter of something that can't actually give you shelter. Who is next? Okay, all right.
Yeah. Hare Krishna Maharaj.
We'll come back to you.
Yeah. Thank you for the nice class. I was also thinking about the two things you mentioned in the japa circle about the determination and being fixed. And I was thinking, how Parikshit Maharaj, perfectly fits that, category. Because the moment he came to know that he has only 7 days, so he approaches Sukadeva Goswami, like, in a humble manner, and asks, like, what should a man hear, what should a man chant, and what should a man remember? And here, in this particular canto, and I think in the subsequent verses, where we are saying you should constantly hear Shrotavya, Kirtavya, and Smartavya, right? So it was very refreshing to hear that, you have to constantly hear that. And this verse also mentions, it basically takes the, the miseries away from you. And there is another verse in Canto 12 that I was reading the other day, and it talks about, how, like, the more you hear or remember about the glories of the Lord, it, takes away the ocean of miseries. So I just wanted to share that reflection. Thank you.
Yeah, it does mention, because Hari means one who takes away. In the word for word, how did Prabhupada put it exactly? Okay, I couldn't hear you. Okay, there it is. One who vanquishes all miseries. So that's helpful to know, that if you take shelter of Krishna, especially through the prescribed means of hearing and chanting about him, he'll vanquish all miseries. That's good to know. Otherwise, I try to vanquish my miseries by keeping up with the status quo of the material world, or trying to make my own arrangements. It'll breed more miseries and more complicated situations. Okay, so we had 1, 2. Who was next? You were next. Oh, and we have online. I think it's Mayapur Bihari. I can see his very handsome profile. I couldn't read the name, but okay, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, just before coming here, I went to gas.
I think it's on, you just got to hold it close.
I went to gas station. I couldn't pay because it was not accepting the card, so I have to go see the cashier. There were 2 people. One was buying cigarettes and lottery tickets. The other one was buying some food and lottery tickets. And he gave $100 bill, and he spent a lot on the lottery tickets. I was thinking, what happiness are they getting just by buying this stuff? But today when we are reading this verse, I was thinking, everybody is looking for happiness, but that happiness and satisfaction can come only when we hear and glorify Krishna. Otherwise, it's everybody's looking for happiness, but it's in vain.
Yeah, this is a nice real life situation where you're seeing through the eyes of Shastra, right? You walk in and see somebody take a nice crisp $100 bill, which you know they worked hard for, and then they put it down on the lottery. My economics teacher used to call that the lottery money a tax on the stupid. She was especially acerbic, but that's what it's called by some economists, a tax on the stupid. And there are myriad stories of people who won the lottery. There's one about a woman who won twice. She won twice, and it was in the millions. And I think the first time, it wasn't that big, because we already said 20 million is not enough. So it was like 3.5 million, which nowadays is like, I don't know if I could, live on that. Then she won again, and the odds were astronomical. They were in the trillions, but she did it. She had some moniker like the luckiest woman alive or something like that. And although she had this money, she couldn't curb her desire to gamble, and she lost it all in Las Vegas. Of course, these are the documentation of people. There have been many studies of people who won the lottery. But when I was thinking about this woman, that she won the lottery twice, then she lost everything gambling in Las Vegas, which is easy to do. You can even bet your house in certain places. So her problem wasn't having enough money. It was the purification of heart to come to this point of being free from greed and thinking I have enough. And if somebody has that, then they're actually stable in this world, and they can be satisfied in any situation. But greed is so powerful that even I have $5 million, then I'm like, how to increase it? It's got to be more. And it burns like fire, and there's never enough. So we need to purify the heart. And whatever kinds of investments we make should be done based on like what's best for my service, and how can I be stable in the world. And it's not actually my energy. It was given to me. I'm the steward of it, so I should be really careful and not take wild chances. Okay, there were a couple more. Yes, Prabhu. Oh yeah, Mayapur Bihari Prabhu. Please go ahead.
Oh, Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam, Jai Shri Prabhupada. Thank you, Maharaj, for this wonderful session, especially the discussion on greed. So Maharaj, I have a question that in my case, sometimes Maya tricks me. The question is, how do I identify that, okay, this is greed? The mind in Maya plays tricks on me that, oh, this is necessity. Look at the inflation. What will happen after X years? This is required, kind of a thing. I mean, any practical tips where I can draw a line that, okay, yeah, because individual criteria is separate, for every individual depending on their circumstances. But general footprints that, okay, this is necessity, but, crossing this line means greed. My primary question is, how do I identify the anarthas? Because mind always tricks me.
Well, the Bhagavatam in the 7th canto, Narada says to Yudhishthira, one of the ways to curb that sense, especially in regard to wealth, because wealth is very enticing. It means power when you have money. And the idea, Prabhupada mentions in a lecture, he says, the idea is everyone thinks, I'll work really hard, I'll get enough money, and then I'll retire, and I won't have to worry about anything. But it hardly ever happens. First of all, people don't like to retire because we like to be active. People who are have the wherewithal to develop wealth in the first place have this sort of active nature, and they want something more. So I know people who are in their 70s and 80s who are highly successful, but they're still driven because it's not like they need any more money. They don't need another apartment. They already have the best of the best all over the world. But they still have this sense that, like, yeah, let me accomplish something. So Prabhupada says that time never comes. So you should cultivate this idea that it's not like I'm going to get enough from developing wealth so that I become, the king of the world, and everyone has to serve me, and I don't have to do anything. But we won't be satisfied in that. So Narada says to Yudhishthira, you should discuss the troubles that come from maintaining wealth in order to not be so enamored of them. And again, it's not saying that one shouldn't do one's due diligence financially. One should. You have to, as I mentioned earlier. But you should also have this sort of sense that this is not the main goal. And also, it's not the panacea that I'm looking for. The panacea is being mentioned here. If you're tasmat bharata sarvatma, just therefore, he's saying, hear about Krishna. The more you're moving into this situation where you feel satisfied sitting down with your family or friends and reciting a chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Okay, that was the highlight of my day. Like, we just recited a whole chapter of Bhagavatam. That's wealth. I was thinking, not everywhere you go, even any devotional community, they might be in a hurry and like, can we do a whole chapter? I was like, no, not now. But if you're in a situation where you can be satisfied hearing and you can increase that, you have the luxury of increasing it more and more, that means that you're getting spiritually wealthy, and that replaces this other drive that I have to have more. That didn't answer your question exactly, but I'm going to try to address that also. If we have scenarios in our minds of what's enough for us, actually math it up and find out what you actually need. And also look at all your assets and think, how many am I maintaining that I don't really need? It's more of an ideal in my mind that this kind of makes me feel safe, that I have all this. Come to reality, like getting a pencil sharpener, sharpen your pencil, and write down the numbers and say, what do we actually need to go on with our service, to have, whatever other things we actually feel that we need. Look at the lowest common denominator first and say, if we only had that, we'd be satisfied. And then after that, say, okay, maybe there's a rule of thumb, a little buffer zone. But just keep in mind, just like eating and exercise, you can expand it unlimitedly. And when you get there to the next level, it's still not enough, because it can always be more. It's just zeros on the end of another number. And that can increase unlimitedly. It doesn't mean anything unless we actually have a plan to spend it, and not just an amorphous idea that this will protect me. That the more money I have, the more protected I am, because it's not true. Prabhupada points these things out in very practical ways. He said, I know a man, he was very wealthy, and then he got an incurable disease. And then he asked the doctor, I need 2 more years to fulfill all my plans. And the doctor said, well, I can't help you with that. And he had enough money to get the best doctors. So Prahlad says it, Narada says it, Yudhishthira says it, Krishna says it. So we could practically do that by taking time to analyze and think of it. What do I actually need? And then, as I said before, being careful when you do come to these opportunities to sit down and analyze what's in your heart. Is there a molecule of greed mixed into this? Because it's let's say you have a cup of milk and you're sitting there at Market and Powell. And the milk glass is sitting there, and I don't know, a bird flies over. I'm not going to say more about it, but I'm going to say you won't drink the milk probably. And so similarly, if you have some grandiose plan, and you notice that there's this molecule of greed in it, you have to look and see in yourself. Like analyze it. Why do I want this? Is it going to help my service and so forth? Just the very fact of becoming consciously aware of it is helpful, because there can be this a pushing that comes from within that says, no, you got to have more. If you have more, you're going to be happy, or you're going to be at least protected from the dangers of the material world. To some degree, that's true. That you should make plans, like how can I maintain this? But also keep in mind always that ultimately none of it's going to work or hold together unless Krishna is behind it. So smart people edge closer and closer to just take shelter of Krishna, even as they maintain their material affairs, but they lose that sense of too much is not enough. So look at it on paper and see all your assets. You can be surprised. Sometimes you have more than you think, actually. It's always
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay.
On the same line, like you're discussing about the greed, but also the Acharya says, like Srila Rupa Goswami in this famous verse, Krishna bhakti rasa bhavita mati kriyate yadi kotopi labhyate tatra lolyam api mulyam ekalam janma koti sukritir na labhyate. So he's also talking about lolyam. So can you please guide how does this lolyam is better, and can this lolyam be replaced, can be considered as a replacement of the material lolyam?
Yes. If you become greedy for hearing and chanting about Krishna, and this will be parallel to let's just take a CEO, and she runs a huge company, and all she's thinking about is like, I have to develop this more, and I can't waste a second. Up at 3 a.m. every day. Why? Because there's millions at stake. And can I get an appointment? Not really, unless you really have something to offer. This is a symptom of somebody who's not wasting even a second in the material world because they have this sense of opportunity. If I want to make sure I'm not even 2 minutes late in my investment, because if I am, I'm going to miss the big thing. But you'll see that same mood in somebody who's greedy for Krishna consciousness. They don't want to be late for anything. They're always there. They always show up because they're getting spiritual wealth. And that's the turning point in becoming greedy. It's like that other stuff's just going to fall apart. Somebody's going to take it from me. But this I get to keep, which is better. The Bhagavatam keeps saying, in fact, you'll find in the 3rd canto, Kapila Dev said, you get to keep this. You know that, right? This other stuff you don't get to keep. All these investments you're making in spiritual practice, that's yours forever. I'm like, I think that's a better investment. Just do the Benjamin Franklin trick. You put a line down the middle of the paper and put all the benefits and then demerits on either side, respectively. And then you come to this awareness. So that's what our real wealth is, and if we can develop that, even as we're interacting with the material world, then we can divest ourselves of this intense attachment to the material world, and we can show objectively how people who have that are much more expert at dealing with the world as it is. Because when you don't have a vested interest in it, you're really free to give yourself genuinely to other people. When you have a vested interest, it's really hard to genuinely take care of people, have loving relationships, so forth. It gets obstructed by this sense that I want more for myself in the material world. So it's a good idea to transfer our wealth out of the bank accounts, our karmic bank accounts, into real bank accounts that'll always be there. And the ROI is ridiculous. What's it going to take, Bob, to get you into one of these? What's it going to take to get you into this spiritual investment? And that's kind of what we're asking people to do. Is just, hey, you have life. You want things, right? Well, you're definitely not going to get them over here. If you have spiritual values and you invest in those, that's something that's permanent. And also it spills over into the other side. It enriches all your relationships and the way you deal with the world. For instance, the way you deal with money. It's much more respectful and less passionate when you have this foundation that my main thing is Krishna consciousness. Whatever assets I have, it's meant to support my practice of Krishna consciousness to the very end. You know, even Brahmanas, I noticed, as I've said many times before, in South India, when I used to spend a lot of time down there, was, you know, they'd have like a really nice gold chain or a jewel on it and stuff. I said, what's with that? Should I get one? Like, you're a brahmachari, don't do that. But somebody told me, they keep those because it's a tradition. Like if you're on pilgrimage, you're in a foreign place, somehow or other you die, then you have something that will pay for your last rites so that you don't leave a karmic debt. And so that, you know, yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, thank you for the nice class and identifying the greed in us. As you mentioned...
Not in you. I don't see any in you, but I'm saying in, you know, somebody like me or other people.
Yes,
go ahead.
Maharaj. As you mentioned that we should do an inventory and check what I am going to keep, what I am going to lose. So I just wanted to know how we can get the inventory of our spiritual assets. You know, because material assets one can see for oneself in the bank account, on the papers. So I feel attachment to them, but the service that we do for years and years, and the assets that I'm gaining, how can I take an inventory of them and feel happy and fulfill?
Yeah, that's a really good point. You sharpen your same pencil, get a piece of paper, and talk to your mentors and also your peers. Ask people, because we can't see ourselves that well sometimes. And it's really important to stay motivated in anything that we do. And spiritual life is the same. You have to stay motivated. So you need good coaching. You have somebody that really has your interest in mind. Like a coach is there for you. It's like, okay, you're moving your foot 1 inch to the right when you serve, right? Don't do that. Move it in. You can't see it, but somebody else can. So if you have good mentorship, and you have every right to go and ask them, listen, I don't know where I'm at. It's hard for me to tell. I can't tell what level I'm at, what my assets are, and so forth. They'll start telling you. They'll say, hey, look what you've been spending the last several years of your life doing. You know, you're showing up enthusiastically for every class. You're chanting your japa. You're going on Sankirtan, dedicating your whatever wealth you have. Every time there's a yagya, you throw huge amounts of money into the pot. I mean, you know, we could talk about somebody like that. And he's like, oh, yeah, I forgot I even did that. And it really helps to get a sense of where you are in Krishna consciousness. And you might have to do it regularly, because we're all self-deprecating. There's this sense like, oh, I'm not doing anything. And it's like, well, wait a minute. First of all, you're a human. Cheer up, you know. Krishna likes humans more than others because they have so much potential. And he likes to work with us. So that's nice. He even comes in human form to, you know, just walk around. Jana Nivaso is one of his names. He walks around the humans and like, hey, it's okay. You can do this. And, you know, he makes statements in the Bhagavad Gita. It's like, Vitaraga Bhayakroda Manmaya Mamupashrita Bhavo Jnana Tapasa Putamad Bhavamagata. He's saying in this, like, there's all these are the three psychological conditions that are holding us back. He said, but many people have overcome them, and you can too. So we need this input, you know, from coaches, spiritual mentors. Go to them and say, like, I really don't know how I'm doing. Tell me. And then they'll say, have you checked this, that? And they may tell us also other things if we're really interested. Saying, okay, you're a little over the edge on this side. You could trim that back a little bit. That could be really helpful for somebody. But we have to be pranipat. Pranipat means, like, come on, tell me. Because most people, you come and tell them, like, yeah, tell me where I'm really doing poorly. And they're thinking, like, I tell them, they're going to hate me. They'll probably never come back either. So, you know, people are really careful. So you really have to mean it and really put yourself out there if you want to improve in anything. You know, it really hurts when you're a writer, and then you put your stuff forward to the review panel, and any little thing they say is like, what do you mean, you know? Everything we do, we take things so personally. So this is one of the reasons Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, you know, be pranipat. Just be, like, really open for people to guide you and even criticize the way that you're doing something. And Lord Chaitanya said, Trinadapi sunichena. This is the main key to advancement in spiritual life. Be open to being corrected by somebody else. So you can do that. Get out a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth opinion, and try to find the coaching staff that you need in this lifetime to stay on a high level of practice and keep increasing. Just like any other discipline, you really have to surround yourself with good coaching. And if you can do that, then you can perform at a really high level. You need a coach that, you know, like, okay, you can do 3 more. Do 3 more. It's like, I can't do 1 more. It's like 3 more now, you know. And then you're like, oh, I don't know how I did that. It's because you had a coach. So Vaishnavism really is, we don't do it in isolation. It's a culture of guidance. So line up that kind of guidance. Okay, Radhakripa Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, there is also a scenario of some people, they have lost their wealth for whatever reasons, because of the addiction or the habits which they have it. And they are in this stage of life where they cannot recoup, and they wanted to keep investing to, you know, recoup the money which they have lost, and they're in the late stage of their life. So what is the advice for them, like how they can overcome this tendency that, hey, you know, since I lost it, I need to recover it, and then they keep on investing and losing it further?
Well, if you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. You know, you have to be smart. And you also, as I said, you have to calculate, what's my bottom line? Why am I human? It's so helpful to give up, actually. I do it all the time. You know, I get so overwhelmed with what I'm not doing because there's so many things I want to do. I want to be everywhere all at the same time. And I'm already thinking now, I have to leave here? I don't want to leave here, but I have to. You know, we're going to Puri, then Mayapur, then Puri, then Mayapur. Then I have to go to the GBC meeting. I don't want to go to the GBC, but I have to. If I want to assert myself and get done what I want to do in life, I have to be there, and I can't be everywhere at the same time. And so sometimes I get overwhelmed by it all, and it's like, okay, I give up. I'll start over. Why did I come here in the first place? You know, I was some kid in Walnut Creek, California, class of 74, Del Valle High School. I left in 73, by the way. But where did I start from? I just wanted to find us, you know, and when I first walked in the door, I was happy. I just want to wash pots. That's all I want to do. It's like, can I be happy doing that again? Yep, definitely can. I already know that space. It's like, can you just be happy being a humble servant to everybody else and just, yeah, no problem. And if you can find that again and again, Trinadapi sunichena, I'm just the servant of the servant. Whatever assets I have now, whatever service I've been given, it's just Krishna's arrangement, and try to go to lowest common denominator and feel like it's okay to have nothing. You know, in Vrindavan, they have this huge hall where they serve out during Kartik. They just serve everybody for free. And they have the nicest prasadam, at least I like it. It's kitri, a little mango pickle, and some papadum. That's it. Glass of water. I'm happy. And, you know, just sitting there with other devotees, they had a little section divided for Prabhupada disciples. And it's like, I haven't seen you in a while. Just sit down, have a little kitri. I'm happy. And I was just thinking while I was in that prasadam hall, I was like, do you need any more than a kitri and a glass of water? Not really. A little mango pickle, maybe. But Prabhupada used to tell us, you know, if you can be satisfied, you just have a place to lie down at night. You know, you got to be comfortable. You got to get your sleep. And then you have a little prasadam and some service. What more do you want in life? And so start over. Always start over and say, like, this is actually what satisfaction is. And that's what this is what the Bhagavatam's saying. Tasmat, therefore, get out of this whole investment, and I can only be happy if I have this, this, and that. And take an inventory and say, like, hey, I've got kitri, I got mango pickle, I have a papadum, and I have friends. I have my friends in Krishna consciousness. We don't care. We can sit on the street and chant for hours, or we can sit in the temple, or we can, you know, fast all day long on Janmashtami and be blissful. Who else can do that? Count your spiritual assets and, you know, in your mind, start over with that. Make that your base of happiness, not all these other things that, unless I win in this, unless I score on that, unless everything. Okay, do those things and do them well and be the best, but also have the base upon which you're doing those things. So it's not life or death. People get in so much anxiety. Kids in Japan, they commit suicide all the time because everyone, the whole society, the high school exam is the most important thing. College, it's a country club. You go there and it's like you're already a made person. Once you go, if you make it into college through the high school exam, everyone knows, like, your life is charted out for you. All you did is go to the college, and you don't really have to study. You just say, that's where I went. And they say, okay, you're hired. And kids get so wrapped up in it, and the parents, that you have to pass this high school thing. But hey, you know, you could be a mechanic. What's wrong with that? What about wood shop or anything else? You're still going to get the same amount of happiness that was allotted to you. The Bhagavatam's telling us this, that you would have if you didn't get it. So try to have your spiritual base in mind before you venture out and try to conquer everything in the world, because it's not conquerable. I forget if I was even answering your question, but there it is. Who is next? Prabhu, you have the mic. Go ahead. And then we're coming up front. This is interesting. Okay.
My humble obeisances at your lotus feet, Prabhuji. One of the struggles I always have experienced is the lack of steady progress in my spiritual endeavors. And the realization that you just shared about having a collection of mentors who can guide you, it's tremendous. And I was thinking a little bit more about it, and oftentimes I feel discouraged that I am not ready enough, that someone will accept me as a disciple. So there is not much of an encouragement to move forward in that path, but starting off with a set of mentors and thinking of your spiritual journey as, just like in material life, the business of going back to Godheading, Krishna consciousness, and having a spiritual board of directors who can be your mentors and constantly coach you, hold you accountable, and track your progress before you are ready enough to seek shelter at the lotus feet of a guru. So thank you very much, Prabhu, for the realization.
Yeah, you'd be surprised, actually. A lot of people think that. like I'm not qualified to even aspire. People think that all the time. And I mean, I know devotees all over the world who offer shelter or initiation and things like that. And they're in the mood of Lord Nityananda. You know, anybody came to Lord Nityananda and just said, you know, I'm ready to take shelter. Then he is a doshadarshi. He just says, okay, come on. And Shivananda saying, a dog runs in, is like, can I do this too? And he's, yep, you're in. And then he makes all arrangements. So it's, I don't think it's on the side of somebody, you know, who wouldn't accept you for shelter. It's more just, you know, taking that little leap and just do it. Because time runs out fast in the material world. My friend Rajendrananda Prabhu, I was very attached to, just left his body recently, in the last couple of years. And before he left, he said, don't waste time. That was his main mantra, don't waste time. I didn't see him wasting any time in his, you know, last 5-10 years, or ever, for that matter, since I've known him, and it's stark revelation. So, better to take a chance than to wait. I'm just saying. Okay, Prabhu. Oh yeah, 1, 2. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I like the point that you mentioned about we are all here because we feel competitive towards Krishna. And as a solution to that, you said, hear about Krishna. As you are mentioning that, I was actually thinking, it's the same prescription that's given when we feel jealousy towards other devotees, other living entities also. When we hear about them, when we hear about their good qualities and what sacrifices they made, how they are there here based on their history, it actually, we lower our guard and we're like, oh yeah, actually he's more relatable than we thought he is, and he's not my competitor, he is my well-wisher. So we were recently reading Brihad Bhagavatamrita, where there was a passage was wonderful where Gopakumar enters Vaikunta, and I was thinking about this. When we hear about Krishna, usually we hear about his greatness and his sweetness. So this section was about his sweetness. So Lord Narayan was telling Gopakumara that you have finally shown me mercy. So this is Narayan telling his devotee that I have been waiting life after lifetime. When will you turn towards me? Maybe this lifetime, maybe this lifetime. And Lord Narayan says, I did not want to disturb the laws of nature that I myself established. But having lost my patience, eventually I broke them myself and I made you take birth near Govardhan. And I myself personally came as your guru, Jayanta, and I initiated you and I guided you all along. So that passage reminded me that hearing about Krishna's eagerness to see us, hearing about so many wonderful qualities about Krishna, actually increases our faith in Krishna and lowers our enviousness towards him, which is really the only reason we are here. So I was just really appreciating that point, how you mentioned that. Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah, that's to the point that Prabhu, you just made. It's like, will I be accepted? Krishna's waiting for us to make a move. But he wants us, after all this time, to make our move. Sometimes he makes his move preemptively because it just shows how eager he is. And I remembered, Radhakripa Prabhu, you were asking a specific thing. What do you do? Like, you're trying to recoup. That kind of mode of passion is never how you develop in anything. Like, let's just say you don't like where your physical body is and you're overweight. Let's just say pandemic started, and in order to deal with the anxiety, you just decided to eat more. Or you were home more, so you ate more, whatever it was, and then you realized that you're 15 pounds overweight. So then, there's different approaches. You say, oh my God, now I have to fast. And Bhagavatam says, fasting, militantly like that, After you do it, then the tongue comes back to you with a list and say, you owe me now. You held back like that on me, now you're going to pay. And it says, now you eat 10 times as much to satisfy me. That Bhagavatam says that, 11th canto. And it's well known, yo-yo diets, people like that. Always have to have a commonsensical way of developing. Maturity and getting ahead in any discipline is it's consistency. And you have to find the base where you can start, and you have to contribute to it every day at the best you possibly can. And your best is going to be different on different days, so you can't freak out. You have to be tolerant of your own inability to do something. And that goes to humility, because you're depending more on Krishna and saying, it's not me, it's you, Krishna, but I'm going to show up for it even though I feel like I'm a rat. So, all right, rats can do this too. Just show up and try to do what you can do with what you have right now, and leave it in Krishna's hands. Then I went to the whole Kitri thing, I think, or maybe that was earlier, but you have to still have that base where you're satisfied. Okay, let's finish with the last two questions. 1, 2.
Haribol. Maharaj, I don't have a question, but rather just wanted to share reflection. So when you said the time runs fast, the other day I was looking at stats, and it was, we only have, average human have 4,000 weeks. So for most of the time, half of the weeks have gone, and other half may have gone in sleeping. So that's just very few weeks. And every Sunday to Sunday, if we don't aim for any progress, and that ropes into your previous example that we have to sharpen our pencil for time perception, so that we can measure and improve.
Right. That's what life coaches do. They'll just sit you down and say, okay, let's get a pencil out and write down everything you're doing. All they do is bring to your attention what you're doing now and what assets you have now, and try to understand, where am I trying to get to from now, and am I actually doing it? And it's important for us to look and see, how are we actually conducting ourselves, how are we using our time? Prabhu, for the close. Yes.
Yeah, sorry. Sir, my question is, I always have a conflict in my mind. Okay, you should have a goal in your life. If you do not have the goal in your life, then by default you are doing whatever comes in, but you will not have a ultimate satisfactions. So if you have a goal, then you feel, yes, I did this much, I achieved this one. But when I go for the spirituality point of view, then I think, I should have some self-realizations. And when you want to go for the self-realizations, then in that case you have nothing to do for that. Just be relaxed and just to have the more and more happiness or bliss. So because that is always conflicting, whether I should have a goal or not. If I do not have the goal, then I have more self-fulfillment. So I am not sure about what to do in that case.
Sure. That's an important question, and one that's fairly common. A lot of people feel that spiritual life is devoid of goals or markers or way of measuring. But actually, it's quite the opposite. We had a session earlier this morning where we sat together and chanted japa. We had this japa circle in the morning. And you may notice that, does anybody have a japa bag with them? I'll just point this out. Thank you very much. Here's a japa bag. And on this japa bag, we find that there are, see these beads on the outside? There's beads in here that have 108, right? And on the outside here, she has 16 small beads and 4 on the other side. So that means that every time she finishes one round, she pulls one of these down. This is a kind of counting. Now, if somebody comes, thank you very much. If somebody comes in here and has a bead bag and doesn't have the counter beads on the outside, we're going to look at him like, what happened to you? Like, where'd you come from? Did you just fall off a truck or what? Because devotees, you don't have counter beads? Somebody get him counter beads afterwards. Because devotee, or devotee, comes from the word devoto, which means that somebody keeps a vrat. And so this is one example, but there are thousands. If you go to Vrindavan, for instance, the center of spiritual activity, everybody's counting everything. I mean, you'll find people on the parikram path, and there's a guy there that has 1,008 stones. So he does 1,008 dandavats, and then he moves one body length, and he's going around Govardhan Hill. And, everything is measurable in spiritual life. For instance, the Goswamis, and I brought this up this morning, there's a song about them. The 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan are famous devotees. They're acharyas. And Srinivas Acharya writes about them, and he says, Sankhya Purvaka Nama Gana Natibi, Kalavasani Krito. He said they counted everything. And their goals were to chant a certain number of rounds every day, to offer a certain number of obeisances to devotees, to write a certain amount. All these things are measurable. So everything that we measure in the material world, we measure in the spiritual world also. And it's the same feeling of wanting to reach that goal. And when you have that, then you'll be able to beat the mind. That is, the mind's always trying to trick us into saying like, oh, don't do so much today. You did a lot yesterday. But if we're able to count what we do and hold steady, then just like in any other discipline, where you have to show up every day and do it, you have to put in your time. Otherwise, your music teacher will say, oh, you didn't practice, did you? So same thing in spiritual life. It's not just relaxing, although we do that from time to time. But we also, it's like, I think that was enough. Not all day, all week, all year. But, every once in a while, we relax and we have, Draupadi or a little something. Walk around the block. Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us online and from coming into live studios. We have a couple of quick announcements about what's happening in our service-oriented organization here, our goal-oriented organization. And we'll start off with Bhakti Community, about how we're measuring how many people are coming. Would you like a microphone? Okay. We can arrange. What's that new tune? I forgot.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Sorry, I was just trying to get my slides up. As you know, Bhakti Community is an online community focused on helping newcomers. So whenever you distribute books, please do also introduce them to Bhakti Community so that they can come and take advantage of the community there, which will help them make progress in their spiritual journey. So this week, we had a very wonderful session on Bhakti On, where we said how to tolerate your faults, because you all have faults and many times it discourages us. But instead, how, as Vaisesika Prabhu nicely mentioned, treat it like hing in your recipes, little bit, so taste, it's there. But don't put a lot, then you will get, the taste will be spoiled and you won't be able to make progress in your journey. So that was a wonderful session, and it was very much appreciated by everyone who attended it. In addition, we had several newcomers who also joined this sessions. I will just share some of those who joined and some of the reflection that they gave, which was very helpful. So this is the brochure. So whenever you go to distribute books, please do take this brochure. Venudhari Prabhu has them. And this week Krishna Prabhu introduced Casey. I think he took Srimad Bhagavatam at Montana State University, and he was really very grateful to be coming in to the community and ask questions. We had Kautukana Prabhu, who introduced William from San Francisco. He definitely he got Chaitanya Charitamrita, I believe, and he was really grateful to come on and be part of the community. Sundaran Prabhu, he happened on Natalia. I think she is a real estate broker or agent, and she happened to get a book at her home from one of the devotees, and she visited temple where Sundaran Prabhu, of course, discussed his purpose, her purpose, and she said, "My purpose is to find out purpose of my life." Then Sundaran Prabhu introduced Natalia to Bhakti community. She came in and she really liked this session as well. Kamal Mataji, this was her first introduction. Thank you, Kamal Mataji. She introduced Kenny, who is from Bay Area, and I believe he got the Bhagavad Gita almost 25 years ago, or 10 years, I forget, one of those ranges. And he read back then, and he was really curious that, of course, that we have a community where he can discuss those things. Prem Dham Prabhu introduced Brendan from South Carolina. Brendan, he received Bhagavad Gita at his university, I think several years ago, and it was just collecting dust, not being utilized. It was just there in the drawer, and then one fine day, because of events in his life, he opened that, I think it was not Bhagavad, Science of Self-Realization he mentioned. He opened that book and he couldn't put it down, then 2 books, then 3 books, he kept reading, then started visiting temple, and then finally he said he has never been closer to God than what he has been ever after his journey. So he was really very thankful for all the help. And Adin Prabhu introduced Erwin from Campbell. He met Erwin. He also got the Bhagavad Gita 25 years ago, and as part of one of his classes, I believe, or something. And he really liked it, and he said, "I'm very curious, I've got a lot of questions, I'm happy that I have a place to come and ask questions." So that was also very helpful. So this session, actually, this Monday's session overran. There was so much of reflections and questions. We had to suddenly abruptly end it, but it was very good, with lots of people coming in with a lot of good discussions. We do have, thank you, Krishna Prabhu, Kautukana Prabhu, for sharing reflections. People did give feedback after the sessions that they really liked it, and at least for one of them, they were having this question, they were getting demotivated because of the faults they had, and they found it encouraging that this was helpful for them to become positive. We did have good women's retreat last weekend, where close to 15 newcomers attended the women's retreat, and they had two days full of various discussions, yoga, meditations, and nature walks, etc. All the women did love the program. I will have maybe Pavni give some update next time when she visits. And we are starting Bhakti Community Bhakti Circle program at Mountain House today, so similar to how we have at Mantra House at San Jose. So thanks to Dr. Prabhu and Sona Gopika Mataji for taking this forward. Really looking forward to serving the newcomers at Mountain House through Bhakti Communities Bhakti Circle program. Those will be the updates. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
And now we have Malini Devi Dasi, our co-Sankirtan leader, who will be talking about our outreach through book distribution.
Hare Krishna. Yesterday was a very successful Harinam that was organized by Shamalangi Mataji and her team. It was the best Harinam, I think, was for 5 hours continuous chanting in San Francisco. I think it was also broadcasted live, so if you have missed it, you can go back and hear it. Thank you, Shamalangi Mataji. And we also served at least 350 people, more than that, full plates of prasadam that was cooked by Hansa Priya. And there were 1,500 cookies that were packed by, made by Hansapriya and her team, but packed also here at the temple on Thursday. And that was this big savior, because as Prabhu was mentioning yesterday, that everybody was in the mode of passion and ignorance. When we asked them for a book, they wouldn't stop. But when we showed them the cookie, they said, oh, I'll take a cookie. And that was a hook. And then after they took the cookie, most of them ended up taking the books as well. So those 1,500 cookies were just gone in no time. And that was a very good addition for the Harinam yesterday. So it was really successful. And Vinudhari Prabhu and team who have packed all those Trimurti sets nicely in ribbons, and they spent so many weekends packing those books. Not only that, they brought all the books arranged for us. We had 4 stations where we were distributing books along with the Harinam, and they were refilling the stations as and when the books were getting emptied. It was so seamless. None of us had to go back and check, and I need more books. So very nicely done by Vinudhari Prabhu and team. Yes, Venudhari Prabhu is on the call. I don't have the exact number. Prabhu, if you have the number of how many books exactly we did yesterday, you can speak up, because I was waiting for that count.
Hare Krishna Mataji. We did more than 7,200 books total.
Wow.
Haribo. So I thought we were doing 2,000 Trimurti sets.
Sorry. We did more than 2,400 Trimurti sets. That will be total of books.
Okay, 7,200 books. Wow. So that's actually a big achievement just in a day. More than 2,400 Trimurti sets. Usually we did last year only 2,100. But this time we did 2,400, and we finished by 4:15 or 4:30 p.m., which is we haven't done that before. So thank you for all the devotees who came. So many newcomers yesterday who came for book distribution. They enthusiastically distributed. It was a very tough place to distribute, but it was really, really nice. Thank you so much for coming. And today, and actually for the rest of the month, this is the Gita Jayanti month that we are celebrating, the whole month of December, starting from today. We want to distribute as many Bhagavad Gitas as possible, and we will be going out door to door, store to store. And Kautukana Prabhu and his team, they're going to different Walmarts, not just in the Bay Area, but around. So if you want to join any one of the teams, then you can reach out to Kautukarna Prabhu if you want to join some Western outreach book distribution. He is the best person to go out with books if you wanted to join. So you can reach out to him, or you can see me if you want to join any of the teams. And Vrindasevika just told that they got order for 240 Russian books. So if you want to join her team. So please see Vrindasevika for any of the Russian book distribution. She can assist you. And thank you very much. We have a huge goal to go. I know Prabhu was asking, do we have goals in spiritual life? But we do have a huge goal here. And you can help if you like. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. In 60 seconds, we'll put away the asanas and we'll stand up for the Guru Puja. But I have a quick clarification that I have to make because Nirkula texted me. I want to make sure that any college students understand that I was talking about Japan when I said it's like a country club. Did you understand that? And also to say that, to reiterate what I said before, when you have spiritual sadhana, you can do and should do better than most people in college and anywhere else. It's not that spiritual life means to back off or wherever and being expert and achieving your goals on that side. All the boxes should be checked. But I said you can be more expert and you'll have more stamina and you'll have perspective of why you're even doing it when you have your base of spiritual sadhana. Now I'm clear. Thank you very much. We'll have Guru Puja in a few seconds. Vanchakalpadurvascha kripa sindhave vacha patitanam pavanibhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Nantakoti Vaishnavini ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Is it on?
Nama Shreshtam Manamapi Shachiputram Atra Sarupam Shri Rupam Tasya Grajam Uruparim Matarim Goshtavatim Radha Kundam Girivara Maho Radhika Madhavasha Prapto yasya pratita kripaya Shri Gurum tam natosmi. He Guru Jnanadarina Bandho Swananda Data Karanaika Sindho Vrindavana Sinahitavata Prasida Radha Pradaya Prachara. He Dinabandho Karanaika Sindho Guru Prasada Mai Mandamudhe Laksha Paradhe Bahupapagade Tatpada Padme Stumatishta Krishna. I bow down to the beautiful lotus feet of my spiritual master, by whose causeless mercy I've obtained holy name, the divine mantra, the service of the son of Shachi Mata, the association of Srila Sarup Damodar, Rupa Goswami and his older brother Sanatana Goswami, the supreme abode of Mathura, the blissful abode of Vrindavan, the divine Radha Kund and Govardhan Hill, and the desire within my heart for the loving service of Sri Radhika and Madhava in Vrindavan. O spiritual master, O giver of divine wisdom, O friend of the fallen, you are the giver of your own bliss, and you are the only ocean of mercy. Although dwelling in Vrindavan, you have descended for the welfare of fallen souls like myself, and you are preaching the divine love of Radha for Krishna. Please be kind upon me. O friend of the lowly, O Gurudev, you are the only ocean of mercy. I am a dull fool and have committed hundreds of thousands of offenses. I have fallen into a dense myriad of sins. Therefore grace me with your mercy, so that my mind may be fixed on your lotus feet and on Sri Krishna. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. Our only wish is to have our consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens our darkened eyes and fills our hearts with transcendental knowledge. He is our Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates. By him rigorous is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and the Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the three worlds. Shri Guru Charana Radha Shivasari Gaur Bhakta-vrinda. Nadia go to Nityananda Mahajan. Pate ate namata jide akaran. Sharaban jan hai, Sharaban jan hai. Sharaban jan hai, Sharaban jan hai. Prabhupada nai bai magi bika. Prabhupada nai bai magi bika. Bolo Krishna, Bhajo Krishna, Koro Krishna Shika. Bolo Krishna, Bhajo Krishna, Koro Krishna Shika. Parara Krishna hoye loha Krishna naam. Parara Krishna hoye loha Krishna naam. Krishna Mata Krishna Pita Krishna Jana Pran. Krishna Mata Krishna Pita Krishna Jana Pran. Krishna Samsara Koro Chari Anasar. Krishna Samsara Koro Chari Anasar. Jive Doya Krishna Nam Sarvadharma Sar. Jive Doya Krishna Nam Sarvadharma Sar. Anariya Gosime Nityananda Mahajan. Nariya Gosime Nityananda Mahajan. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vishnupad Paramhamsa Briraj Gajaja Shtotarashta Shishimad Bhai Charanada Vinda Bhaktivedanta Sai Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhamsa Briraj Gajaja Shtotarashta Shishimad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasri Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Sri Mayapur Navdeep Dham Ki Jai Sri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Jamuna Devi Ganga Devi Ki Jai Samveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to some devotee. All glories to some devotees. All glories to some devotees. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. all the way till 2, there's a great opportunity for everybody in the community, anybody listening online, that we're going to have a cleanup in the kitchen. We'll clean every corner, just like the devotees of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu cleaned the Gudicha temple. And this is the center of the Krishna consciousness movement, the kitchen. It's a kitchen religion. And because we've been pushing so hard, so many things being cooked and so many devotees coming in and out, there's a great opportunity now, because there are areas in the kitchen where other living entities have thought like, oh, you left so much for me, and you've made an environment that's so pleasant for me. We'd like to very gently, although there are loving brothers and sisters, to make it less habitable for them by making it so clean that they may go elsewhere to find their livelihood. And when we clean the temple, Mandira Marjanado, then we're naturally cleansing our hearts. And actually the real standard for having a temple of any size is that it should be revolutionarily clean. So clean that when people see it, they think, wow, these people are clean. That means less clutter and everything cleaned. And in a community temple, there's a way in which things pile up because not everyone's sure where they go. And the way we run our temple here a lot of it has to do with all of us each doing something, rather than just depending on department by department. For instance, if one sees a scrap of paper lying in the parking lot, there's two things one might think. One is, that's somebody else's problem. Or one might think, I'm part of the team. And to that extent, Peter Burwash, who was a very successful businessman and also a really nice devotee, had once told how there's a restaurant, and you go in and sit down, and then you say to a waiter, because nobody's come to you yet, excuse me, could you bring me a glass of water? And the waiter then says, oh, I'm sorry, that's not my station, mine ends right here. And he said, companies, corporations, communities that excel, that are great, have this, everyone in them has a sense that we're all in it. And there's a mantra that goes with it. Would you like to hear the mantra? Yes. Do the needful. Everyone say. Do the needful. So when your mind says, let somebody else do it, it's not my station, then try this mantra instead. Do the needful. And there's a great need right now to clean the kitchen, to come up to the standard. We are regularly, daily looking at other places we can expand to, because we're getting big and we're going to get a lot bigger really soon, because so many devotees are joining Krishna consciousness from various stations around here. And at a certain point we'd like to have more facility sometime very soon. So we're looking at areas. At the same time, we should be really clear that Krishna's given us this space, and the more we take care of the space we already have, it has to be top-rate clean and taken care of properly before we actually deserve to move to another place. Because you can always make a place bigger and then make that messy too. So it comes from the inside out. All this to say there's an opportunity starting tomorrow at 10 a.m. And if you can stop in even for 15 minutes and just pick up a broom or a scouring pad and say, this is my corner, I claim this, I'm going to clean it so you could see yourself in it. That would be a great help. And if you want to stay a few minutes longer, that's okay. Just bring your work clothes and come in to clean. Are there any other announcements? Next, we'll remember how fortunate we are to have prasadam. Yesterday, we saw people relishing prasadam, and it's quite a contrast when you're on. Yes? We have yoga mats. Outside? Okay. Thank you, Hansapriya. It's been paining me for some time that devotees have to sit on the ground in the parking lot. You're all yogis and sadhus, so you don't mind, I think. But I mind, and it doesn't look well. So we're trying to come up with a system, and apparently Hansapriya has, of getting something to sit on for all the devotees. We try to keep improving it, but it's been a long time coming, and I apologize for any inconvenience up till this point of everyone who's had to sit on the ground. Please forgive me. Any other announcements? We're very fortunate to have prasadam, and this is a song we're singing to remember how fortunate we are and how merciful Krishna is. Sharidad vijaja jodendriya kaheka jive pele vishaya shagare dharma jedi payati loba moisi Please come take prasadam. Hari Bol.